Welcome to the Antlered Crown podcast, where we discuss brews, witchcraft, spirituality, and more.
We hope through conversation we can continue the trend of the collective awakening or learn something new from ourselves and each other's. Each
Today-
other's. Oh, you messed up.
Do it again. We'll do it again.
Okay. Good. Sorry. See, this is so bad. Here we go.
Welcome to the Antlered Crown podcast, where we discuss brews, witchcraft, spirituality, and more.
We hope through conversation we can continue the trend of the collective awakening or learn something new from ourselves and each other.
Today, we will be drinking some beer.
Beer, yes.
Beer.
Yeah.
Yeah, beer.
Mhm.
Then we will be talking to our favorite sea witch.
So come on in.
So,
Beyond the weather and the marsh, there is a whisper in the dark through the tides of disarray, where wisdom knows the way. If you listen very still, there are answers to the endless, where the ancient pulses deep of the memories you keep.
welcome to the Antlered Crown podcast. I'm Elwin, and I'm a fourth generation hedge witch.
And I'm Amanda, the Momerator, and I wish we were on the beach with our guest today.
Today we are drinking something. What? That is so weird.
So repetitive,
I'm
but we're
still-
still drinking the beer.
Yeah. By the way, we're still drinking the beer. We should really cut that out.
No, it's good. It's
beginning.
good. It's fine.
Okay. All right. I'm drinking Scottish Ale, Belhaven.
I'm drinking Victory Sour Monkey Sour Triple.
And talking
Two.
to Sigrvina.
Yay!
Yay!
Welcome.
Yay! Thank you.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you guys?
All right.
Yeah.
All right. I'm very
Yeah.
tired. I'm quite tired.
You're always tired, Dan.
So are you.
What are you drinking, Sigrvina?
I've got two drinks here, as is my way.
Mm.
I've got this, which is just kind of like a fizzy water with magnesium in it so that I can relax. And then I've got this, which is more so, it's like a syrupy, pepperminty kind of concoction that I made.
Ooh.
Mm,
Those both sound very refreshing.
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
just very refreshed.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
you're in California. How close are you to the beach? Are you able to get there often or?
Yeah, it's about like 15, 20 minutes, depending on which route you take,
Mhm.
you know?
All right. Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty close. There's a lot of, California is cool because there's so many different landmarks. It has such a diverse, like, nature
Mhm.
situation going on. So there's mountains and there's canyons and then there's ocean all within 30 minutes of each other,
Mhm.
which is cool. Yeah,
That's
Yes.
very
really
cool.
adds to witchy endeavors.
Definitely. Have you identified really well? I mean, obviously, with you being a sea witch, identifying as that, has that the spirit of place really resonated with you? Have you, where am I going with this question? Have you always been?
I don't know, but I'm
Have you-
interested to find out.
Let's figure it out together.
Mm.
Have you always resonated with
Have
where
you
you've
always
lived?
had a connection?
A connection.
Oh, yeah,
Thank
to
you.
where you live?
There you go. We got it.
Yeah, because I haven't always only lived in California.
Okay.
Like I've lived in Portugal, I've lived in Ireland, I've lived in Prague, I went to school in Cyprus,
Mhm.
and I lived in Rome, and there was always like I felt really uncomfortable in Rome because there wasn't a shore. There
Mhm.
wasn't like a large
Mm.
body of water there. So there is a connection that happens between myself and the land that I'm living in at the
Mhm.
time. I have noticed that for sure. And I tend to like resonate more so with a land that has either the ocean or a lake or a
Mm.
river very close by. I can't be
Mhm.
landlocked. It just doesn't work. I've also noticed mentally it makes me go a little bit like it's hard for me to
Yeah.
feel happy or it's very strange.
Right.
But yes, yeah.
I know that feeling.
Yeah, you would.
So I was
Growing
like-
up on an island.
Well, yeah.
Now you're in the middle of a giant country.
I moved here, and it was just weirdest. Like,
Mhm.
I couldn't smell the ocean, and I lived fairly
Mhm.
close to the ocean.
Yeah.
It's just a walk away from the beach, and
Oh wow.
it was one of those things that I never really thought about. And then when I moved here, it was like, I can't smell the ocean. I
Mhm.
took it for granted almost. It was always there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's weird. Every time I think about it, it's the furthest I would have been away from the ocean my whole life.
Yeah.
It's weird. Yeah.
Yeah, because you don't really think about it. I didn't think about it until I started moving around, and then you become very aware of what's around you and
Yeah.
what you naturally feel more comfortable in, or like as you said, like smelling the ocean brings back so many memories of different places that I've lived and what that did for my mental happiness if I could smell it. Whereas if I was just in the middle of a really polluted city and what that did to my mental happiness and
Yeah.
Mhm.
being able to ground and focus and meditate even.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's that's what I was saying before, wasn't I? But the like the spirit of place. It took me a long time to find that here, I think.
Mhm.
Just because it's very different in many ways.
Yeah.
There are similarities, but there's also like huge differences. And I had to take time to adjust in that way, which is to myself, I've moved to all over, I've lived all over England, and but there's always been something there that's predominantly the same in some way.
Yeah.
And so it was a bit more of a challenge, I suppose, moving like that, like so far away.
Yeah.
But one that I really enjoyed actually, because it's like it's more of a challenge. I think it's a challenge to try and relearn how to connect with everything around you again.
Yeah.
Because some things don't work the way they work in England. They're just
No.
different elements, different environments.
Very different spirits, different elements,
Yeah.
different rules.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. You got to be very careful about such things.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
What is the biggest thing that you've learned from the Witch Talker Instagram community, and what has your experience been like for you?
My experience, all things considered, my experience has actually been very positive. Like I've made so many good friends and connections with people that I wouldn't have made otherwise, and people that I've like met in person. Like I've been to Vlasta's house and we've had pickles and like like I've
Vlasta's
hung out
great.
with Vlasta's the best. I love her so much. Vlasta. There's my friend who lives nearby, Rose. There's Mishka Valhalla, who's a Norse pagan, and he lives in Alaska, and I went to go visit him. There's like so many connections that I made that are so dear to me. And even in people that I haven't met, but that are just from all walks of life and have different practices that I do that I never would have been able to meet otherwise. That's been really amazing for me. Because I grew up like very sheltered, and I grew up in a time before the internet existed. So it's like we didn't have that back then, it was more so like I was the weird witch of the neighborhood, but kind of had to keep that on the down low. But let's see, the thing that I've learned stings a little bit, but it's definitely why you have to keep the magic a secret, like my elders would tell me, and like my grandmother would tell me, we don't always tell people what we do or why we do it, but just there are some things that you can share and there's other things that you can't. And I understood that on some level, but being on Witch Talk really taught me why we can't share some things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I know what you mean there. I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's that saying? I've often regretted my speech, but never my silence.
Yeah,
That's a good saying for witch talk in many
that's
ways.
a perfect saying for witch talk for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Mm.
I know you also had an experience where someone was ripping off your content for a while there, which probably was very traumatizing for you because they were having success with it. And you're like, these are my videos that were successful. What are you doing?
Yeah, it's not even that. It was just, it's funny because in that experience, I was being called a clout chaser and I was being called like an attention whore, drama queen, right?
Right.
And like there were people even coming at me saying, we all read things from the same book, but from my perspective, it was like, no, we don't, because that was passed down to me from my family that was
Right.
like indigenous Siberia. So I know you didn't read that from my book. Like, what are you talking about? It's
Right.
like, what are you talking about? It's just, yeah, that was just a very strange experience because the
Mhm.
majority of people and a lot of practitioners that I really respect
Yeah.
came out of the woodwork and were like, you know what, I'm on your side, blah, blah, blah. So that's kind of really all that mattered to me at the end of the day. But there
Right.
was a lot of trolling that came with that. And it was like, I'm sorry, you guys, like, are you seeing what I'm seeing? I don't think that you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so odd. That's one of the weirdest things I've ever experienced in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something it's there's a couple I think left on TikTok who do that.
Yeah.
And they're pretty well known, but I think for people who are new coming into like things like TikTok, especially on Witch Talk and stuff like that, they don't know.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I think that's where those people prey on them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Everyone else sort of knows and blocks them and stuff like that. But it's, to be honest, when the whole copycat thing is really frustrating, especially with the copy accounts, stuff like that.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's there's no law against it, but it's,
Yeah.
that's the worst bit. There is no law. There's nothing they can do, nothing they will do.
Yeah.
So that's when you get the heart out the freezer.
Oh God.
It's like, well, there's no law against that, is there?
No, there's not. There's really not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's to say?
Same thing.
Isn't that what magic is for? It's, it's
Mhm.
wielding the elements at your disposal to enact a change that's not happening in the mundane. So,
Yeah.
Absolutely. Very
It works.
true. It works.
It works.
Yeah.
It's just,
it works.
we work with what we've got.
Yeah. Following that line, how have you handled the trolling, the negativity that comes with having an account like that? How do you deal with it? How do you manage it?
I mean, it depends because trolling exists in like a hierarchy, right? There's the comments that you get that are just so asinine and so stupid that it's just, whatever. I don't care.
Mhm.
And then there's the ones that are more so like directly attacking my family or my practice where I'll say something. Usually I'll troll back, but it depends on how insulting they're being. If they're being super insulting, I'll be like, you get a video. It's rare that I'll go that far. It's
Mhm.
rare that I'll like stand up and be like, listen. But it's usually I'll troll back or I'll just immediate delete and block because I don't know. I have such a wonky approach to people who are trolls in general, and I think it's probably because of all the death work that I do, but I always just carry this truth inside me that's like, we're all gonna die one day. I really don't care if that's what you think of me. Like, I don't care. Delete, block, bye. And then you just have to move on from it.
Mhm.
I'm a big fan of the delete and block.
You love a block
Yeah,
button.
it's so like bloop, bye, easy, done.
Yeah. And people kind of make it as this weird stigma, like this person just goes around blocking people. Like, yeah, I do, because
Yeah.
it's my account. If I don't
Yeah.
if someone is being hateful or or nasty on my account, then they're blocked.
It doesn't
That's
even
it.
have to be that far though. It could just be like you don't like the vibes of someone. Like
Oh, I've done that.
if you don't like the
Yeah.
vibes of someone and you
I've done
block
that.
them, there's really like, why would you get upset about that?
Yeah.
Right. You can't really control. Also, it's like if you're going to be the person that's leaving that kind of weirdness in someone's comment section, then you kind of have to accept that they're going to
Mhm.
block you, or they're not going to want to engage with you. Or if
Right.
they respond to you, that's another thing that I've experienced. If I directly responded to someone, they freaked out that I responded to them in a video and were like, oh, why are you drawing all this attention to me? It's like, I'm sorry, did you not think I was going to address that?
And then they delete their comment.
And then they delete the comment, and then there's this whole, it's just so ridiculous.
It is.
It's very weird.
It's ridiculous. It's so weird.
Mhm.
I like it when they delete their comment and you see the thing, you click on it to go and see what they said.
And it's gone.
Oh, it's gone.
Hmm.
Shock. I like that.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
If you could give one piece of advice for new witches, what would it be?
Okay, so if I could give one piece of advice to new witches, it would be that it's not wise and it's not a strong enough foundation to build your entire craft based off of what you're seeing on social media or what you see in a movie or what you see in TV. Those things can be very illusionary and it can put us on a path of something that's just not right for us. And I would tell people to just spend a lot of time and to be patient with it, but just spend a lot of time really delving into and becoming intimately attuned with their own inner world and what their dreams are telling them and what their inner archetypes are and the type of stories that they're drawn to and the mythologies that they're drawn to, and really coming into knowing who they are inside, because at that point you just develop this level of spiritual discernment that makes it practically impossible to ever steer yourself wrong. And I see so much of that online of people, not understanding what a sign is. They'll see a video and they'll be like, well, they were talking about crows and then I saw a crow, so does that mean that that's a sign for me? And there's a way to avoid that, and it starts with understanding yourself. Like that would be my starting point for everybody, to just, before you do anything else, before you get all crazy with trying to like hex people and like all this fancy stuff, just get to know yourself first, because even that reveals to you which type of magic is right for you and what your strengths are and what your gifts are and how you can cultivate that and make that stronger. Yeah, that would be my advice.
Absolutely.
That's great
really good advice.
That really is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people do need to hear that, because I think there's so much glamour
Yeah.
to being a witch. It's an aesthetic now, is it not? It's
Yeah.
It is.
it's an aesthetic. And so I think people just think it's pretty things, and it's not.
Well,
It's
it is
not.
pretty things as well. Like,
Yeah,
you
it
know,
can be,
it can be, but
Mhm.
yeah.
but it can also not be.
Yeah, true.
If you're Elwyn, you have cow hearts in the freezer just ready to
That's what
go.
I'm saying. Like, I just found a dead crow the other day. It was like half of a crow, and I saw it and was like, okay, me from 15 years ago would have been like, ah, and me now is like, okay, that's the good stuff right there. I gotta get that.
Dead crows are rare.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
good.
Oof, so much magic there.
Mhm.
I'm so excited.
I would be as well.
I find
actually.
dead animals too all the time. It's so
Yeah.
funny because I go for a lot of walks, like nature walks,
Yeah.
and I'm just like, hey, do you want this? Like, just
Sends me a picture of like a possum. Like,
like, no.
no, not that one. It's like she's
So
going
funny.
shopping.
Want these? I found some feathers. You want these? He's like, how many? This many.
This
All
is- I've
right.
got enough
All
for
right.
this. Unless they're like particularly important, like
Mhm.
I don't know, a blue jay or a raven or a
Like a
crow
cool
or
feather.
an owl.
Yeah.
But don't keep bringing me back just
Pigeon feathers.
Pigeon feathers.
Rude. Pigeon feathers don't matter to you.
Oh no, they're lovely, but I've got a lot of them. I could make a whole bird now out of all those
More
feathers.
pigeons.
There's a lot of pigeons. Anywho, I wanted to talk about elemental paganism because it's something you've been going into more on your
Yeah.
TikToks recently. So how do you define elemental paganism and how did you start working with it?
I would define it as
Mhm.
I would define elemental paganism as really working and tapping into and aligning yourself with the cycles and the rhythms of nature and understanding nature on a biological level. So it's not just the magical aspect of it. You're also studying the science of the tides, and you're studying the different types of winds, and you're studying marine biology. And with that understanding, then you can learn to wield the elements in a certain way that produce magic. Like you wield it, like you learn to channel it. Like for wind magic, for instance, you learn how it works and what direction it's coming from, and you learn to tap into that. And air spirits, you learn to tap into wind spirits,
Mhm.
and you learn that knowledge of what wind does and the medicine that we can receive from different types of winds, and how we have air elements in ourselves. And this type of alchemy is then formed that you apply to your magic to
Mhm.
attain the result that you're trying to achieve, especially if it's like, I would use wind magic if I wanted something that had to do with mental clarity, or if I was trying to focus on something, or if
Right.
I felt stagnant in a certain way and I needed things to kind of move forward, I needed that element of like, then I would tap into wind itself. It's a very interesting path because it doesn't require a lot of tools. You
Mhm.
can, if you want to, use tools,
Mm.
but I think I started getting more into it. It was something I always did, but then I started understanding it more and conceptualizing it into a practice as I got older. I'm going to say, like, as I got into my earlier 20s, because I just started to realize that that was the type of magic that I really gravitated towards the most. Like, it was the one that I understood the most,
Mhm.
and that I just knew it felt like I was remembering it. So, and
Mm.
it wasn't something that I could really read anywhere. So that's also why I go back to this advice of really tuning into your inner world, because this was not something that I could like read or research. It was something more so that I had to learn and go into on my own. And it kind of unfurled in a way that it was like,
Mhm.
oh, elemental paganism. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
That is cool.
Have you had experience working with elements?
Funnily enough, when it comes to air, wind, and stuff like that, that's something that I'm starting to move more into the potential of.
Yeah.
I think it's especially because of TikTok using my voice, which
Yeah.
in a sense is just the manipulation of air. But I associate that with communication as well.
Mhm.
And oftentimes I speak things. If I want answers, I will speak them and almost push them out into the air, if you know what I mean, like push them
Mhm.
out to find where they need to go, to be taken where they need to go.
Yeah.
And yeah, so most of the time, like same with fire as well.
Mhm.
I was very earth based in a lot of stuff, but lately fire is more significant. I'm seeing more potential in it, if you know what I mean.
Mhm.
So yeah, there is for me personally, like the elements are essential
Yes.
for any form of practice. I pretty much need to have them represented or call upon them in some way
Yeah.
for any practice. But I know what you mean of that. What you're saying about it's not something that's written in a book per se.
Yeah.
That's what we was talking about that with Marshall as well,
Mhm.
about that, the idea of a lot of magic isn't in books. The
Yeah.
books tell you guidelines of how to acquire knowledge through the spirits and elemental spirits, and how you will work with them is not necessarily the same way that another person will work with them.
Exactly.
But it's finding what works for you best, and
Yeah.
kind of, yeah, it's, I think that's what I love about it as well, because a lot of people like used to say, do you remember this, could you mentor me and stuff? I'd be like, I can't mentor you. Like, I don't teach.
Yeah.
I can help and I can guide and stuff like that, but I can't teach you what I do, because what I do is me. It's
Yeah.
me. It's not you, you know.
Yeah.
And
There'd have to be such a kinship there, I think. And I think that word mentor is tossed around a lot
Yeah,
right now
it
on
is.
TikTok. Like, this is my
Yeah.
mentor, and this, and I think teaching someone something that you learned is quite different than being a mentor to them.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right there.
I think there's a lot more on a soul level. You are identifying with this person, and you are
Yes.
sharing more than just physical words of knowledge that you have learned. It's a lot deeper than that. Maybe I'm misunderstanding, but that's how I
No, I think you're right on point there, because a lot of people ask me for mentorship, right? And I'm
Mhm.
always like, what's your question? What's your question? Because
Yeah,
I
that's
just really
easier.
I don't know, right? Like, what's the exact question that you're asking? Because to do a full on mentorship, to
Mhm.
me, based on what I've experienced and the initiations that I've had to go through, that would be a really long, arduous process.
Right.
And some of the things that I had to experience and face wouldn't land the same way for someone else that didn't go through the same or that didn't have the same life experience that I had. So it's just,
Mhm.
I don't know, it's just such a strange thing to be like, can you mentor me? If I think of a mentorship, I think of it as like, can you just teach me the foundation of the knowledge that you've learned, so I have a place to
Mhm.
go to then build
Mm.
off of that and design my practice around.
Mhm.
But I don't think that that's what people think of when they're
Mhm.
asking for a mentorship, especially on some place like TikTok.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's once again, that's what we were saying. I think it comes down to that thing that you either, you know, there are those who are born adept to magic,
Mhm.
naturally witches. There are those who become witches, yes, and then there are those who practice magic and are successful at it, but are not naturally adept. Their
Yeah.
mind doesn't take all those twists and turns.
Mhm.
And I think that's what I love. It's called the winding path,
Mhm.
because you don't see what's coming, and you can't plan ahead. You
Oh,
can't,
for
you
sure.
know, in any way. And a lot of people can't do that. And I think
Yeah.
that's the idea, is you have to be, well, as they say, cunning. You have to be cunning.
Yeah.
You know, you have to adapt things to how you want and how they
Yeah.
would benefit you, rather than what it says in a book or someone else does. And some people can't do it. And so it is difficult, because I think when people say that, a lot of the times they're like, I just don't understand why.
Yeah.
I was trying to teach someone something, and they was like, but why? I was like, what do you mean why? Like,
Yeah.
it's like, this is magic. We're not putting a car together. You know, what do you
Right.
mean why? It's like, you know, there are virtues of this and this, and we're putting this together. What we're trying to do is create. And they were like, I just don't get it. And I was like,
Mhm.
okay, so we're done. Yeah.
Oh.
Okay. This is where we break. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. But I think that is one of those truths that is, I think some people can take offense to as well.
Mhm.
yeah.
But it shouldn't be, because honestly, like, anyone can do magic, yeah, sure, but it's almost like a code. It's a path that you follow.
Mhm.
And if you know what they mean, and if you find the answers yourself,
Mhm.
then you've got it. And I think sometimes people, they practice magic as though that they're reading a recipe book.
Yes.
This, and this, and boom, oh, nothing happened. And it's they forget the alchemy within, if you know what I mean. I think that's the important part that some people just don't get.
Yeah.
Yeah, it reminds me of like back in the day, there were a lot of spells being posted online before we had TikTok and before we had, you know, like Facebook and MySpace. Before all of that, I remember there was a lot of spells being posted online. And even then, I thought that that was weird because there are people who would see that and then think, okay, yes, I'm going to follow this to a T, and this is going to produce the result that this spell says it will produce. But that's not how it works always. It's just that spell was written by a specific person in a way that they've alchemized for themselves. Like they might have a special relationship to those herbs already that they're using, that someone else is just stumbled upon this spell, does not have that relationship to those herbs and plants, and will not have the same results. It's just, I don't know, that's a concept that is difficult to explain if it doesn't already make sense.
No, I get it. It is.
Yeah.
It's like, that's the one thing we was talking about before, wasn't we? Was stinging nettles. I can't. There's
What
no
was Vlasta?
Yeah, but there's no stinging nettles here. But
Vlasta and her nettles.
Nettles.
I love nettles. I there's so like, but there's so many varieties of nettles. You know?
Yeah.
One of my favorites was called a dead nettle, which
Cool.
didn't have a stinger, but it had these tiny little like bell-shaped flowers, white flowers. And you could pick them, and they used to taste just like sugar. We used to eat them when we were kids. Yeah. But they're associated with death and rebirth, the dead nettle. But they're lovely. They're really sweet. And you can, the nettle tea as well. It's like,
wow.
Really, yeah.
How did you draw a parallel from nettles? Because I don't know how you made that leap.
Nettles is one of the sorry, but nettles is one of the plants that I have a really good relationship with. It grows in abundance, but it's also like the fibers of the stalk.
What you would use to replace something something for instance, else that's related to nettle.
A stinging nettle is naturally good for protection. So you could use those fibers of the stalk, and you basically just pound the stalk, and it becomes like a very hard flax fiber. You can use that for binding, or things like that. But what I meant is that nettles don't grow here.
Got it.
So that's one of those things.
I think they do. They're not native to where we are.
Yeah, that's what I said. They don't grow here. I mean, in this area.
Okay. In the US, they do grow.
They do grow, but they don't grow here. Yeah.
Right.
So
for sure.
Yeah, I went off the beaten track there. And
that's okay. I got back.
All right.
Blasta actually gave me a little jar of nettle.
Oh.
It's like this is what happens when you have witch friends, is you get like little herbs.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I'm not a fan of nettles.
I gave her a hagstone and she gave me nettles.
That's like, adorable. You had a hagstone. That's so cute. Yeah.
We're going to have to do that when we go to England.
Yeah, find some more hagstones.
Look for hagstones.
Absolutely.
We were unsuccessful last time.
We were. But we'll find one. Yeah. Ever since that one time, remember when we were traveling in England with Morgane, and we were driving to the Museum of Witchcraft, and we had to pee, and me and Morgane went into the bushes, and I squatted into some nettles, and my ass itched ruthlessly the rest of the drive. I do not like nettles. Morgane's like, I'm pretty sure you squatted some nettles there, man. I'm like, nah, did I?
We didn't think that she'd never seen a nettle in her life. So
I've never seen a nettle. I was just like, I'm gonna have a pee right here.
These spiky leaves. I'm just gonna like.
I should do her accent.
Plant.
Amanda,
don't do it.
You didn't squat in some nettles. No, it was real bad, Morgane. I'm sorry. It was much sexier and beautiful and Scottish than that.
Much more Scottish than that, because that sounded like someone from Birmingham.
Hey, I'm not great at accents.
No. Do a British accent. You've been married to a British person for 5 years.
You need to sort out your priorities.
Now, you think that may be good when you realize she was trying to mimic Hermione Granger.
It was beautiful. It was perfect. On point. Gorgeous.
Yes.
Yes. Anyway, so you move on to Souls of Animals and you do death work. How did that begin and what was the most difficult part of that for you or in this practice?
What a segue. Okay.
What a segue from nettles and asses to death work.
Death work. You know, it kind of goes back to what Elwyn was saying about the winding path and how you don't usually think, sometimes you can't predict where you're going to end up. I never would have expected that I would be doing death work, because when I was a little kid, I had thanatophobia. Like, I just did not want anything to do with death. I didn't want to learn the family rituals that we did when pets died. I just didn't want any part of it. Didn't want to think about it. Just kept it far away from me. Just like, no. And then as I got older, you know, we would rescue a lot of animals. My mom and my grandma and I, they'd kind of find their way to us. So that kind of taught me how to be a guide for them for something that you're eventually going to let go. So it's like, it started in phases. It started with helping the animals. And then when I really came face to face with it was when my grandmother was diagnosed with dementia. So when she was diagnosed with dementia, I started realizing and picking up on the fact that her soul already started voyaging before she actually passed. And that kind of forced me to kind of realize what was being asked of me in terms of spirit and elders, what was being asked of me, because I knew that moment was going to come and she was going to need that. So that's when I really actually started studying it and the process of it and what that means and how we kind of go through death moments every day without realizing it. And it's almost a training process to lead you to like your eventual moment. So, I mean, it was really her. It was my grandmother starting that cycle that made me actually embrace it. And then when I started embracing it, that's when animals, I don't go looking for them. That's the interesting thing about it, is when I started training it, they started kind of just coming to me or being on my path, or a friend would be like, oh my gosh, there's a squirrel that got poisoned in my backyard. Like this kind of thing, it just started happening. So it was like, I didn't have a choice. It was,
I've
like,
sent you some pictures.
I guess we're doing this. Yeah. But yeah. The hardest part of it would be, well, this was harder at the beginning. The hardest part of it at the beginning was realizing that it's not so much about saving, it's about understanding that death is not the end of something. Death is just the beginning for a whole other journey, and you serve as the person that's helping this being initiate that journey. And a lot of us and a lot of beings don't think about that when we're alive. So when it happens, based on my lineage, when it happens, there's this moment of like, wait, what the hell is going on? Where am I? What's going on? And the death guide kind of works as that person in that moment to be like, all right, calm down. This is not in that way. I'm kind of like romanticizing it a little bit. All right, calm down. This is where you need, it helps focus them on where they need to go and to not get like too distracted, especially if the thing died in a moment that was especially stressful or just gruesome,
Traumatic.
you know? Yeah, a little traumatic, because sometimes it's something that I was taught is sometimes people can realize that they haven't died and they're just kind of like, huh? Like, why am I lost on this hiking path? What happened? Like this kind of thing. That would be the hardest part, was learning that it's like, it's not this end point, and it's okay to teach people and animals that they can go. You can't hold on to them. You can teach them to go. Letting go was the hardest part for me, but I'm starting to get better at it.
Yeah.
It's like carrying the guilt of that. It's like, even as a death worker, right? Because sometimes I'll get an animal that's on that doorstep, and my job is to either help them pass over it or stay,
Mhm.
and kind of realizing that it's not always about saving a life, and like knowing that it's like sometimes it's like there's nothing that you could have done,
Right.
but you kind of hold on to it. Just animals are super important to me too, and I just hold so much guilt over any of them that pass, even if it's not something that directly involved me. It's just this guilt that's like, oh God, like what? I'm
Yeah.
so sorry. I can't. They're just, oh, I can't even talk about it. I'm just
Yeah. It's difficult. But it's funny because when we adopted Newt, which is Elwyn's new kitten, which I'm sure you've seen on the lives, we call him Rufus all the time, which was the cat that passed
we
away.
don't call the other one Rufus.
Not the other one, but just in our heads. I don't know. It just
Yeah.
slips
It
out.
just-
It's
I look
very
at him,
odd.
and even the kids call him Rufus, and I say, no, that's Newt, and this is Moo. She
Yeah.
went, no, that's Moo, but this is Rufus. I said, no, this
This
is
new.
Newt.
And he
He's-
doesn't look like
he doesn't look like
Rufus at
I said-
all.
I said, I showed them the picture. I said, do you remember this was Rufus? She said, yeah, and that's Rufus.
Yeah. So we've been
like-
thinking there might be some
there might be a little
some
bit.
element.
It's not, it happens. I've had
Yeah.
people come to me, like I had someone come to me on TikTok because their cat had died.
Mhm.
And when I connected to that cat to help them, I knew it was gonna come back. I just didn't know when. And then it came back. Like it just showed up on their doorstep. And I don't even remember how it just was one of those things where they opened the door and then the cat was there. And it was like, it's not something that's impossible to happen. It does happen. And I think the clue in it is that you keep accidentally calling
Yeah.
him Rufus. That's how animals work a little bit. When they come back, reminds me of familiar spirits. They take a little bit of time, or they
Yeah.
take their own time that they need to kind of figure out if they want to come back as a cat again, or when they're going to come back.
Yeah.
But it does happen. You know?
Also, he's I don't know if he wasn't born well, this one. His back legs are weak, and so he has a bit of a limp, and he also had a micro eye. So that's why he's got one eye, because the eye was deformed when he was born. I don't know, it just seemed he was particularly special, and I had a dream about him, so it wasn't like we
didn't just go adopt a cat out of nowhere. He bothered me for a solid month about having to look for this black cat with one eye, and I was like, you can look, but I don't think you're gonna find one. And then he found one. I'm like, shit, I guess we're adopting a cat with one.
Yes,
We're getting one.
Yes, we're doing this.
I saw it. I was like, that's him. That is
there
the
he
cat.
is.
Even
There
the
he
blanket
is.
that he was laying on was exactly the same. I was like, that's the cat.
Yeah.
Yes. That does happen. Like one of my best friends met her cat before he died. His name was Crow. She met him that way. She was driving and she just had this feeling, because she'd been having dreams, oh, there's going to be another cat that I'm going to have to adopt, and he's going to have this little splotch on his stomach, right? I just don't know when I'm going to see him. And it happened when she was driving. She was on a road trip, and she had this like, oh, I need to pull the car over kind of feeling.
Yeah.
And she did it and ran into a pet store, and there was a little litter of kittens there. And she even said out loud, oh my gosh, how am I supposed to know which one it is? And as she said that, he stood up on his hind legs and put his paws on the glass, and she saw the splotch on his belly and was like, oh, there he is. There's Crow.
There he is. Oh, I love that.
No.
That's so cute. There's good parts to it then as well.
Yeah.
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 Of course.
Yeah. All right. Go on then. It's your turn.
Okay. So you this one is how do you balance your magic and your mundane?
I don't. I'm just kidding.
There's no balance here.
There's no balance here. It's only magical all the time. No, I have to. No, I really have to remember to have fun sometimes, and that it's okay to have fun. And like sometimes it's okay to just go for a walk just for the sake of going for a walk, not for receiving this divine message from my ancestors, you know, or like I'll even do something like I'm just going to light my candles today, and it's not going to be a fire scrying session, and I'm not going to look at the wick. I'm just going to light it for the vibes. Things like that. I also found that it helps me if I have a friend group that's not just magic folk.
Yes.
Right? Like I
Yeah.
have to mix it up a little bit and give myself hobbies that have nothing to do with magic. That's how I have to balance it.
Yeah. People who don't practice magic or anything like that, who are just a mundane people or muggles, if you like, it's really difficult sometimes to just talk about some things because it melds in, and then they're looking at you like, what? And I'm like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. All the time.
Yeah.
All the time, because as a magical person, your brain just naturally thinks that way.
Yeah.
So it comes into a conversation if someone's talking to you, even about something as mundane as like, oh, I was making soup last night. And then I'll just be like, oh, well, something will come out about like, oh, kitchen magic. And then it gets lost on them, or they just think it's kind of kooky. They're just like, yeah, okay, whatever. Steer my soup clockwise. Sorry, don't mind me. It doesn't matter. Or no, the thing that's always, it's when we're outside. If I'm hanging out with people outside and then I'm like seeing a shape in the clouds, or if some animal interaction happens and I'm like, oh, did you know what that means? Do you know how important that is? And the person's just like, yeah, whatever, it's a crow, get over it. Like that's the type of stuff that I find like, okay, whatever, ignore me.
Yeah. I know exactly what you mean. It's I'm like, oh. And people just don't react, even though it's like, I don't know. It's like, you know, like an eagle.
Yeah.
They'll be like, wow, look, there's an eagle. And it's flying super low. And people are like, oh, yeah, cool. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, they just look at it and then look away. And I'm like, but look and see what it does. Like, there could be something there. But people are just like, it's just an eagle.
Yes. What do you mean it's just an eagle? Or just, I have this experience at the beach with the crabs. If I see a crab, people are usually like, oh, how cute, little crab. And I'm like, wait, look to see where it goes. Look to see if it's carrying anything. Look to see what it's doing. What do you mean?
Yeah.
Why would you look away?
How has your practice evolved, and what brought you into witchcraft initially?
Well, let's see. Well, okay, so I was always around it. There were a lot of folk practices that I grew up with that came from people that wouldn't have called themselves a witch, but I mean, they were there, you know, and that was kind of like the gateway into, well, what else is possible, or what else did we used to do before we moved here and here and here? Like, it just kind of sparked this curiosity from a young age. And I was always running out into the hiking trails behind our house and into the woods in our neighborhood to create pacts with the spirits. It's just like something that I would do, where I would go out there and I would talk to them and I'd be like, please make this happen in exchange for like marshmallow and some little cakes that I have, right? And I remember that I would forage for like different ingredients and be like, I'm making a spell. Or like, it was just all very like innocent, and it was play, right? When I was younger, it was like, oh, how do I get hit this boy to ask me to the dance? I'm gonna do it with magic. It was that kind of stuff. Right? It was like, it was making tea with my grandmother. It was like learning about coffee grounds from my great aunt. That's kind of what started it. And then as I got older, I got more curious about where it all came from, and it started to just turn into this like wild, passionate desire for more and more knowledge, and to do the things that like the great grandmother was doing and the great grandmother was doing, and then like exploring both avenues of my ancestry and why we stopped doing certain things and trying to reconnect to that.
Yeah.
And then it kind of went down this avenue of more so mysticism and shamanism, where it was just like it went from just being the practice of magic into like, okay, now we're connecting to the spirit realms, and now we're dipping more so into divination, and we're working in the dreaming, and we're like, you know, we're going through all these different initiations. That's kind of where I'm at now, because you know, like my grandmother and her grandmother didn't take it as far as I did, for sure. But I don't know, it would just always seem like I had no other choice. Like there was no other way that I could have turned out
Yeah.
than the way that I did. But yeah, I don't know. It just was always this curiosity towards it. I always had an inclination towards it.
I love the it's every single person who is a generational witch says that same thing, including myself, that there were people in the family who were witches but didn't call themselves witches.
Yeah, they just don't use that word.
It wasn't a word then. It was like, no, you don't. No, with everything else.
We don't do that.
Yeah,
No,
we don't
that's
do
not
that.
that's not what we do. We don't do that. No.
Yeah.
My dad's side of the family still does that. Like they have a lot of pagan practices without wanting to use that word. So it's like I still can't use that word with them, but I watch them do these rituals and these like sacred bathing rituals, and I'm like, what do you guys think that you're doing right now? Like, what do you think that is? Okay, I guess we're just not gonna call it what it is if that's what makes you feel safe. But okay.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So
Yeah. I just skipped down to the last two.
I was gonna say, because we actually covered that one.
We already talked about that.
Yeah,
We already talked about your branches of magic you're drawn to, what you're practicing, and local spirits and stuff.
But what part of sea witchcraft do you feel called to the most? Just gonna
Let's see.
Good, right.
Next question.
No, there's so many aspects of sea magic that I just love so much. You know, there's working with the water as its own sentient thing. There's working with all the animals that exist in the oceans and the ones that we don't see on the surface of it, the ones that are deep down inside, and then using those to communicate with the spirit realm. There's the whole aspect of weather magic that goes into it. You know, there's how fluctuating and changing the sea is, and all the tide work. It's like I'm just gonna list every single part of sea magic.
I love everything.
Everything. I don't know. I really, if I was gonna like break it down into one thing, it would probably be just the ocean itself, the water itself, and how much wisdom is just in the water, and how much healing you can get just from like putting your hands in the sea or just putting your feet in the sea. Simple sea magic, like holding. I've gone to the ocean sometimes and just held my hands and then used that to meditate or scry or pray into, and then just released it. It can be as simple as you need it to. It can be as complicated as you need it to. That's what I just find so beautiful about it. And it's water, like we have water inside of us. It connects us to so many things. Yeah.
All right.
What are some things you do regularly in your practice at the moment?
Oh, yes. Banish and cleanse every day. Sometimes twice a day. Yeah, no, banishing and cleansing is probably the thing that's consistent. Even when I don't feel like doing something or when I'm tired, I'm always like, oh, okay, gotta get up and do the banishment. I gotta get up and like cleanse things. Yeah, usually banishing, cleansing, and then I do have a practice that I do. It follows the lunar cycle where I go to the ocean every full moon and then pick up the things that I find along the shore, and I take it back and I leave it on my altar, and I work on that every day. Like I speak prayers into it and I do little workings on it, and then I take it back at the next full moon, and then just kind of like keep repeating the cycle. That would be another like regular daily practice that I do. But for the most part, it's like banishing, cleansing. That just gets you so far. So simple, but gets you so far.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's a necessity.
Yeah.
What kind of banishment are you doing? Are you doing?
Don't try. It
I'm
might
sorry.
be a personal thing.
You don't have to answer.
Do not reveal this information live. No, but, no, but my teacher taught me the lesser banishment ritual of the pentagram. That's the one that I
yeah.
kind of always fall back to.
Yeah,
Mhm.
It's like
I do as well.
I just, I know it by heart. So it's
Yeah.
like, all right, let's do this. It's the easiest one.
Yeah.
The easiest one. It's the
Yeah.
one that I don't really have to think about.
Mhm.
It doesn't take that much energy. It just takes my focus in that moment. So yeah, that's usually my go-to.
Yeah, that's the same
Yeah.
here. I find that if I don't do it, I start feeling the effects of it. I'm like,
Oh,
right, I
yeah.
need to do it. Yeah.
You haven't done it for a while now.
I haven't.
You should.
I should, but we've been fairly busy.
Yeah.
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 But
It does. It can also sometimes feel a little bit burdensome because there is the whole like, oh, now I gotta and I gotta face this way and this. It's like a whole like dance almost. It does sometimes feel burdensome, but I also really feel the effects if I like skip a day. I can feel it. It feels like congestion, but like a spiritual congestion.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, gotta blow my nose, gotta do this LBRB.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And now I have to do it, don't I?
Yeah, you do.
Because that, yeah.
It was a
We
sign.
brought it up. We brought it up as a sign
It's
because I
much-
wasn't gonna say it, and I was like, "Oof, I feel like I gotta say it."
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do. I think it's my way of rebelling because after a while I'm like, I don't want to do it today. But I know I should. And then I
Yeah.
feel bad.
Yeah.
So is there anything you want to promote? Anything at all?
I mean, I have a Patreon. I keep forgetting about that.
That's a great thing to promote.
I have a Patreon
Yeah.
where we talk about sea magic and we talk about elemental paganism, and there's the different tiers. There's the smaller tiers that are just for readings and like different messages that I get from cloud scrying that I share with people, and then there's the general elemental paganism side, and then there's the more practical tier, and then there's just the sea magic tier for people who want to dive more into sea magic and what it all entails.
Oh,
That's
right.
awesome.
Brilliant. Yeah.
And you can find Sigrvina on TikTok.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sigrvina, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yes.
Ooh. Well, you can
All right.
find us on TikTok and Facebook as the Antlered Crown and Instagram as the Antlered Crown. All the same. We're
It's all the
really
same. It's
easy.
all the same.
Or YouTube is Elwyn the Witch.
Yeah, because we had to be different.
Yeah, that one spot.
I offer a variety of readings, including bone, tarot, medium connection, deity confirmation, as well as spiritual consultations, which are done live and scheduled via Zoom. I am also offering spell work and custom merchandise, all of which you can find on my website, theantleredcrown.com.
You could also join our Patreon if you wanted and get access to our Discord server, group meetings, one-on-ones with Elwyn, tutorials, discounts, and other goodies, depending on the tier level you choose.
Speaking of which, here is our Antlered Crown patron shout out.
Which I'm literally going to read off my phone because I forgot to type it up.
You do it. You do it.
Thank you for joining Ash and Matilda, Alexa, Lorian, Julia, Caitlin, Courtney, Lisa Marie, and Bella. I feel like I've said some of these last, but you're going to get it twice.
You're going to twice, so
You're
it's
so
fine. Don't worry
fucking
about
special that you get to be shouted out 2 times.
it. Yeah. All right.
Honestly.
Next time, what was that? You just like really like, like this. It's like, I know. I was a dramatic pause.
Oh, Lord.
Next time, we'll be talking about Cornish witchcraft and some of the practices that have defined my craft.
And always remember,
Tip your witch bitch.
bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.